Welcome back to Frightening Abyss. Today we're diving into the dark web's mysterious and often chilling world. It started innocently enough for Jake, a 25-year-old interested in cryptocurrencies and online privacy. In a world where data was increasingly valuable and digital anonymity seemed more like a necessity than a luxury, Jake had become fascinated by the dark web. He was not a criminal. He didn't have malicious intent. He simply wanted to learn more about security practices and privacy protocols, and perhaps uncover some insights into the complex, often shadowy world of cryptocurrency. He was careful, taking every precaution to stay anonymous, using encrypted messaging apps and a reliable VPN to mask his identity. One evening, while browsing through a few privacy-focused forums, Jake stumbled upon a thread that seemed different from the usual discussions about tech. It was a link to an unmarked forum. The page didn't have a title or description, only a list of obscure usernames. It wasn't clear if it was a scam or a hidden gem for privacy enthusiasts, but curiosity won out. Jake clicked on the link. The page opened, and for a moment, it seemed like nothing more than a standard forum, devoid of much content. But as he scrolled, a pop-up window suddenly appeared on his screen, blocking his view. The message was simple, but unsettling. "Do you want to join us?" Jake's heart raced. He sat back, unsure of how to respond. At first, he thought it was a scam, some sort of phishing attempt meant to trick him into clicking something dangerous. He quickly closed the window, telling himself it was nothing more than a prank or a malicious advertisement. He had read enough about dark web scams to know how quickly things could spiral out of control. He shook it off and continued his browsing. But something about the message gnawed at him. The cryptic tone, the simplicity of the question. It felt oddly personal, almost as if the message had been waiting for him. However, he dismissed the thought and moved on with his life, convinced it was just some random glitch. The following day, however, things took a bizarre turn. Jake sat at his computer, sipping coffee, when he noticed an alert on his phone. A new email had arrived. He unlocked his device and opened the inbox. What caught his eye was that the message came from an anonymous email address with a string of random characters. The subject line was chillingly blunt. "We know who you are." His fingers froze on the screen. Jake hesitated for a moment before opening the email. Inside, the message was brief, almost too simple to be taken seriously. "I see you. I know what you're doing. We've been watching." At first, Jake thought it was just another scam or junk mail. Maybe someone was messing with him. But then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. An attachment. It was a photo, one he immediately recognized as being taken from outside his house. It wasn't a blurry or random shot, but a clear, well-framed picture of his front door, taken at an angle that could not have been captured from the public sidewalk. The only way the photo could have been taken was if someone had been standing on his property. Jake felt his pulse spike. He opened the email again and scanned the rest of the content, but there was nothing else of significance. Just a line. "We see you, Jake. Always." A cold sweat dripped down his back. How could they know his name? He hadn't shared any personal details on the dark web or even in public forums. He had taken every step to ensure his anonymity, using burner emails, encrypted chat services, and a VPN. But somehow, this person, or group, seemed to have cracked it. In a panic, Jake immediately checked his IP address, suspecting that maybe his VPN had failed, or that the website he visited had somehow exposed him. He ran a quick IP lookup, but everything appeared normal. His VPN was active and working properly. He couldn't figure out how they had managed to find his location, let alone take a picture of his house. Over the next few days, the emails kept coming. Every day he received a new message from a different email address, but each one contained the same cryptic and increasingly sinister content. Sometimes there were more photos, each one taken from a different angle or location around his neighborhood. There were even photos of him at his computer, taken through the window of his apartment. The most unsettling email came with a link to a dark website, warning him, "If you don't follow our instructions, we'll expose you." The threats continued, growing more aggressive with each message. It was clear that they were tracking his every move. They knew when he visited certain websites, when he logged into forums, and even the things he had searched for privately. One email mentioned a specific term he had Googled the previous day, something related to cryptocurrency he had been researching in private. They seemed to be watching everything he did online. His browsing habits, his social media activity, even his personal messages. Jake's fear turned into paranoia. Every time he opened his inbox, he half expected to see another photo, another cryptic message. Every car that passed by his apartment seemed suspicious. Every shadow in the corner of his eye made him jump. The constant anxiety gnawed at him, and he stopped visiting the dark web altogether. He changed his passwords, switched email accounts, and even moved his computer to a different room, thinking that might help. But no matter what he did, the emails continued. Each time he blocked one of the anonymous accounts, another one would pop up in his inbox. It was clear that the person, or group, was relentless. And worse, Jake had no idea how far they had penetrated his life. Desperate, Jake reported the emails to the authorities, but by the time they got involved, the group behind the messages had vanished. The emails stopped coming, and the photos stopped appearing, but Jake never felt safe again. The paranoia lingered, even after the threats seemed to fade away. He wondered if the group had backed off because he had reported them, or if they were simply biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Every time he logged into the internet, Jake felt like someone was watching over his shoulder, just waiting for him to slip up. He had learned an unsettling truth. Anonymity on the dark web was fragile, and there were forces out there far more sophisticated and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The experience left him with a deep mistrust of the very tools he had once used to safeguard his privacy. Even years later, the thought of those cryptic emails still haunted him. Images of his house, the chilling words, "We see you," echoing in his mind. In 2014, a man in the UK found himself entangled in a terrifying and life-altering experience after visiting a seemingly innocuous site on the dark web. The dark web, notorious for its anonymity and unregulated activities, often serves as a marketplace for everything from illegal drugs and weapons to more sinister services. Unfortunately, this man's curiosity led him to a website that offered various contraband, which would unknowingly become the start of a horrifying chapter in his life. While surfing the dark web, the man stumbled upon a site that appeared to be relatively benign at first glance, offering services such as illegal drugs, counterfeit documents, and other illicit items. Like many users of the dark web, he was seeking something specific and wasn't aware of the dangers that could lurk in these hidden corners of the internet. It's important to note that while the dark web does harbor some communities that value privacy or anonymity for legitimate reasons, it also attracts individuals and organizations that prey on the vulnerable. On this particular site, after some casual browsing, the man was contacted by an anonymous user. At first, it appeared to be a typical interaction, perhaps even an automated response or a casual scam. The individual identified themselves as having compromising videos of him, videos that he had never known existed, yet they claimed to show him in a highly vulnerable and damaging situation. The victim's heart sank as the anonymous individual seemed to have an unsettling amount of personal information about him. The blackmailer's message was chilling and direct. "I have these videos of you. If you don't want them made public, pay me a substantial amount of Bitcoin. If you don't comply, I'll release them to your friends, family, and colleagues." The man began to panic, wondering how his privacy could have been so thoroughly violated. The realization began to sink in. The dark web, a place where he had felt anonymous and shielded, was now the tool of someone who had weaponized that very anonymity against him. The blackmailer's threat was clear. Failure to pay the demanded Bitcoin would result in the release of the compromising videos to the victim's social network. For someone living an otherwise normal life, the prospect of such a public exposure, of personal secrets being laid bare, was utterly terrifying. The amount of Bitcoin demanded was considerable, far beyond what the victim could easily afford. Unable to bear the thought of being blackmailed and fearing the potential fallout from the public release of the videos, the man eventually turned to the authorities for help. What followed was a delicate and sophisticated operation. However, through a combination of techniques, including tracking the Bitcoin transaction, digital forensics, and a network of international law enforcement agencies, the police were able to locate the blackmailer. It turned out that the person behind the blackmail scheme was a criminal operating overseas, likely in a country where authorities had little jurisdiction. Despite the difficulties in tracking the perpetrator, The authorities were successful in halting the blackmail attempt before the victim's private life could be exposed. The criminal was arrested, and the blackmail threat was neutralized. But while the police's intervention stopped the immediate threat, the experience left the victim profoundly shaken. While the authorities had successfully prevented further damage, the victim's life was forever changed by the ordeal. The psychological impact of being targeted and extorted on the dark web cannot be underestimated. For months after the incident, the victim struggled with anxiety and paranoia, constantly fearful that more people would learn about his vulnerability. He was also left to wonder how the blackmailer had acquired such intimate knowledge of his life. The terrifying question lingered in his mind. Had someone been watching him in his most private moments, or was there another explanation? In the years following the blackmail incident, the man became aware of the dangers lurking online, particularly on the dark web. Though he was grateful for the authorities' involvement, the experience had opened his eyes to how easily one's privacy could be compromised. He became an advocate for online privacy and security, warning others of the risks associated with exploring the dark web, no matter how innocuous it may seem. Moreover, this case is a reminder of the broader implications of living in an increasingly digital world. The man's experience highlights the vulnerability that many people face when engaging with the digital landscape, and how even seemingly innocent online behavior can lead to terrifying consequences. The incident also revealed the dark web's darker reality, where anonymity is weaponized for extortion, manipulation, and exploitation. This true story of dark web blackmail is a chilling example of how easily lives can be upended when online anonymity is abused. While the victim's case ended with the criminal being apprehended, it is crucial to remember that for every successful intervention, there are countless other instances where law enforcement is unable to catch perpetrators. For anyone considering exploring the dark web, this story serves as a stark reminder of the potential dangers that exist, and of the vital importance of remaining cautious and aware of the risks that come with navigating these hidden corners of the internet.